Kia ora koutou no mai haere mai. My name is Roxy Mohebbi. Thank you so much for joining us as we try to ask all the key questions you want answers for about the COVID-19 vaccine from two very much needed and probably overworked health experts. Immunologist Dr. Maya Brewerton and Dr. Apitala Maitonga, who is an Auckland-based GP. Kia ora korua, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Kia ora.
We're all part of the Whole Truth COVID-19 vaccination project, which produces content countering misinformation on the vaccine, as well as appearing on stuff.co.nz. This kōrero will be broadcast on Māori TV, New FM and 531 PI. Thank you to our partners Māori TV and Pacific Media Network. Big question here, but how do we know that COVID-19 vaccine, Pfizer, is safe?
I think whenever we introduce a new vaccine, there's a clear process that we follow through, and the developers have to start by testing it outside of humans first, and then they move into clinical trials, and those are done in phases. And so it's phased through these clinical trials, watching for any safety signals as they go along.
So those safety signals, if we just touch on them, because we've kind of been told there's 58 conditions that are associated with MedSafe and all the approval of the Pfizer vaccine. So how vigorous is that process to make sure things are all safe?
Oh yeah, it's extraordinarily rigorous, and I think the 58 conditions that you've heard about are conditions that were put in place largely, actually the majority of them from memory, were around ensuring that the manufacturing is consistent, because when they approved this vaccine right in the beginning, we could see on the horizon that the world demand was going to be big, and so they were going to have to scale up production. And so it's not just about what we saw in the clinical trials, it's that every time we get one of those little vials, it's identical.
Right.
And it's identical irrespective of which factory in the world made it. And so most of those conditions they were put in place was around that.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah.
It's important,
Totally.
It's essential. And I think a lot of people don't even recognise that this happens all the time in the medicines that we treat patients with, and it is rigorous, so we can feel reassured by that.
Yes.
But I think the other conditions that they put in there were around ongoing clinical safety, and that was information that came out of the clinical trials, but also information from countries overseas.
Right.
So part of these conditions were just about ensuring that the safety was going to be closely monitored.
Api, what made you decide to get vaccinated?
It was an easy decision for me as a health professional, as someone that sees a lot of sick patients day in, day out. And so I wanted to be sure that I was protected so I could continue to do my job, but that I didn't become someone that could possibly pass on the virus by catching it from one of the sick people I was seeing. I mean, I know we've got PPE and masks and gloves, but I just wanted to be sure that I was doing everything for me, for my patients, but also for the wider community, you know, the people I mix with, my friends. And I wanted to be sure I was contributing to that immunity for the community.
What would you say to someone who was feeling uncertain about getting the jab?
I always make it clear, it's not a decision you make now. You might want to think about it, but please come back and discuss it with me or someone you trust, rather than other sources of information from someone you may not know.
Dr. Google. Can we talk about the risk of the vaccine versus the risk of getting COVID-19 itself?
So I think we have to be really clear that there are risks with the vaccine. Okay, whenever someone is consenting to have a vaccine, we want them to understand that the risks are that you will have these common side effects like a muscle aches or sore arm. You may feel unwell for a day or two. Some people feel quite sick, like they're going to actually vomit. That's quite a common symptom. So we must ensure that our patients know that. You can have more serious reactions to the vaccine, and we take those very seriously, and we make sure our patients know that that's a possibility. One of the important ones, because I'm an allergist, is that people can have a severe allergic reaction. But I also tell them that is rare.
Yeah, like how?
So on average, it happens in about 1 in every 200,000 injections. But for that one individual, it's really meaningful. And so all of our vaccine centres are set up to keep an eye on you after you've had it, and they've got all the staff there who can treat you. Another important one that's talked about a lot, and it is important, is the risk of heart inflammation. You've probably heard of this. It's called myocarditis. And that again is a very rare side effect. But for those individuals who get it, it's important that they know that risk exists.
Wow.
So it's important that people understand, yes, there are risks with the vaccine, but when we're talking about those, we're really honest about them. But also we have to balance it up about the risk of the virus itself. And so the risk is far higher if you get COVID-19. And I do think it's going to eventually penetrate through and find everybody.
So on that, people will say, okay, I've been vaccinated, but can I still get COVID-19?
Yes,
so
unfortunately you can still catch COVID-19, but that's why it's really important that we continue the public health measures that we've been practicing all along, the social distancing, wearing a face covering when you leave your house, when you leave your car. I think we need to think about maybe this is the new normal for us, that we just need to protect ourselves and each other from one another so we can continue to mix. However, if you're vaccinated and you get COVID-19, it's very likely that your illness will be very mild. Often you don't even need to go to hospital. We've seen in this latest outbreak, majority of the people that needed hospital admission, that needed ICU, were all unvaccinated. Only a few were the vaccinated ones.
What about pregnant women?
So initially we didn't recommend it for pregnant women because we did not have the data.
Yes.
But then in June, our advice changed really around as more data came out and many, many tens of thousands of women in the US had received the vaccination. And it became clear that it protected pregnant women. And again, if we compare that to the virus,
the risk.
a pregnant woman is 4 times more likely to end up in intensive care if she gets COVID-19. She's more likely to have a preterm delivery. So pregnant women can be vaccinated any time during their pregnancy, and I would encourage any pregnant or hapu wahine out there right now, if you're not protected, then I'd really encourage you, because I know it's a real concern for pregnant women. They want to protect their baby.
Yes.
And I think the greatest way you can do that is through vaccinating yourself.
So Maya, what about the long-term effects of the vaccine?
So if you look back over the last 60 years with vaccination, if you do experience a side effect or an adverse effect from a vaccination, we expect to see that within a couple of months. And that has been across all the different vaccines over all the different years. And the reason is we give the vaccine, it's a single dose, and then your body clears it. So if we're going to see a problem, we're going to see it soon. The other thing about the mRNA vaccines is that they've been around for a long time, much longer than I think most people realise, because they weren't working in this space. So it's been decades, and they're actually used in clinical trials to treat people with cancer. Wow. So it's been one of the areas of research for this particular type of vaccine. And so I think that I wouldn't have taken it if I was concerned about the long term.
Thank you both so much for joining us today and answering all these questions, and just in general your mahi out there on the field. And thank you all for tuning into this COVID special, and hope you're all staying safe out there.